Side by side by side, right to the line, straight out of a movie. Let's talk about an instant NASCAR classic in Atlanta. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and we just witnessed one of the best NASCAR races in history, one of the closest finishes in NASCAR history. 3 wide, right to the line. Kyle Busch, Daniel Suarez, and Ryan Blaney were battling it out, coming all the way to the checkered flag, and Daniel Suarez was able to take home the victory. We'll talk about how big this is for that 99 team in itself, but let's just talk about the finish alone first. Between those 3 drivers, the margin of victory, 3/1000ths of a second. That is the third closest NASCAR finish ever in NASCAR's recorded history. That is the third closest finish. From first place to third place, the difference was 7/1000ths of a second. That is probably the closest ever between 3 cars. I don't know. We'll have to go back and look at that. Maybe there's another instance where it was close, but absolutely insane, straight out of a movie. One of the best finishes I think we'll see ever. It reminds me of the 2000 and I want to say it was maybe 2010 or 11 at Talladega a few years ago with Johnson and a few other drivers. But this was even closer. What a race! 7/1000ths of a second from first to third place to finish out this race at Atlanta. Absolutely insane. Atlanta is probably, I'd say this might be my new favorite racetrack. It's definitely a bit fluky. It's definitely a bit wild, but it produces good racing, and you see your top drivers at the front, and we got a fantastic finish today and a fantastic race. We had a few moments where it was getting a little wacky with some wrecks, but overall, what a race from Atlanta, and let's go ahead and get on into it. You can take a look at the finish here like I was talking about. Kyle Busch gets a push from Bubba Wallace to try to make it into that middle lane. You have Daniel Suarez on the high side trying to carry that momentum from the top lane to go just a little bit faster, and of course you have Ryan Blaney on the inside, and it's 3 wide, come to that line. Nobody behind any of these 3 drivers to give them a push. So they were all stalling each other out. Kyle Busch in the middle there probably had a little more air coming on both sides of him, which pushed him back a little bit. He was the only driver I knew didn't get the win. I knew Busch wasn't the winner, but I could not tell between Suarez and Blaney at all whatsoever. And even when you look at the replay of the finish, the camera at the start-finish line, it is very close. I want to say the scoring, NASCAR's scoring monitors, had them tied, had the top 2 positions tied in this race, and they had to go back and take a look at the finish to determine the winner. I mean, my mind is absolutely blown. I'm just trying to accept what I just watched in Atlanta. What a race. And we'll get into, we got to talk about what this means for Daniel Suarez, because Daniel Suarez did not get a win last year, had 1 win 2 years ago in 2022 at a road course, which was Sonoma. But this is a big deal for Daniel Suarez, huge deal for that 99 team, because when you go into the summer like they did last year and in 2022 before they got their first win, this is a team that says we need to make the playoffs. We have the speed, the equipment, the money's being put in for us to make the playoffs as a team. The 99 team needs to be making the playoffs, and it's with the driver behind the wheel, with how things have run last year. We didn't know. We didn't know if Daniel Suarez was going to make the playoffs this season. It wasn't a guarantee. And it was honestly, I would say if I had to pick before the year started, I don't know if I had Suarez in my top 16. But this takes all that pressure off their shoulders. You now can go the rest of the season and focus on one thing. That's, for one, getting more stage points. But now you're going to be focusing on setting up for the playoffs, getting more race wins, to trying to find ways to win the race instead of getting good points positions. This changes their entire season from now until September when we go back to Atlanta for the playoff opener. So big deal for that 99 team. It's always good to get that win early, and we'll see how that moves over. Same thing for William Byron, but even bigger for Suarez, because this is a driver that we don't know will win another race this season. I'm not going to say he won't. I mean, he has a lot of speed. He's in a track house car, but once again, went last season winless, so that's why you have to point that out. And we'll go through the rest of the top 10 here. Let's go through everything that just happened. Ryan Blaney, a solid second-place finish. How many times is Ryan Blaney going to either win, in this case, lose a photo finish? We can go back to 3 Talladega races where Blaney was right there, was side-by-side coming to the line, and we can go to today where he lost it by just a few inches. But what a season for Ryan Blaney so far. He was fast last week in Daytona, but those Penske Fords were fast all weekend long. You can go back to Joey Logano, who got caught up in a wreck. Austin Cindric, who finished in the 4th position. Awesome day for those Penske Fords. Austin Cindric was really fast all day as well. I want to mention him, but Kyle Busch finishing in the third position. So unfortunate. You're 7/1000ths of a second behind the winner, and you don't even finish second, you finish third. But a solid year so far for Kyle Busch. You go back to Daytona a week ago, had a lot of speed, was running very well at Daytona, got caught up on pit road with many problems. Pit crew was not the best last week in Daytona. I made some changes going into this week, but 12th place last week, got stage points, and got stage points today, third this week. Solid start to the season for Kyle Busch, getting those points, which is important moving forward to the rest of the season, which was sort of something Kyle Busch had trouble with last year, was finishing races at the end of the year. Cost him a lot of positions. We'll see how Kyle Busch does. And now that we're no longer in the pack racing side of the schedule, the drafting side of the schedule, Kyle Busch was fast during this portion of the season. A few others were as well. Austin Cindric, Bubba Wallace. We'll see how that carries over next week in Las Vegas, if they can carry that momentum, carry the speed moving forward. Same thing for Daniel Suarez. Now that he has a win, what can they do differently now moving into each race weekend to try to go for more victories? That'll be fun to watch as that unfolds. I talked about Austin Cindric fast all day, led a few laps, was showing some muscle all throughout the day last week as well. Come close to winning the 500 last week, got wrecked going to come into the white flag, and then, of course, was up front today, finishing in the top 5. Bubba Wallace, 2 top 10 finishes to start the season out. It's starting to become a really smart racer and confident racer, I think, because that's been a point of conversation for Bubba Wallace, is how confident is he, how smart is he at making decisions. It's certainly getting better with this 2311 racing team than it was, 3-4 years ago, and you can notice it very well. Bubba Wallace last week was able to execute perfectly, finish in the top 10 at Daytona, was able to execute very well today, get a solid top 5 finish. And once again, I know it's really early in the season, but Harvick's been talking about it on the Fox booth. Points matter, and each point matters going through the entire season. So these points do matter for that 23 team very much. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., solid day, had some trouble throughout the day. I think he got caught speeding on pit road, might have went a lap down or so, was able to come back up, get a solid 6th place finish. Ross Chastain 7th. Michael McDowell, who I actually have as one of my top drivers of the day, was able to have a really fast weekend, qualified on pole for the first time in his career. After that was a storyline, after like 460 something starts, Michael McDowell qualified on pole for the first time, had a solid day. Did get some damage on a wreck on pit road. You can see here last week's Daytona 500 winner Michael McDowell made contact coming onto pit road, wreck, hit the inside wall. That's a pretty heavy amount of damage for both of those cars. William Byron was essentially completely out of the race after that point. I think he was, I think he finished, but he was completely out of the race for a decent finish. Michael McDowell's team, the 34 team, was able to recover, get all the way back up, solid 8th place run. You had Chris Buescher in 9th, who actually Chris Buescher spun early on in the race as well. I want to say that was, what was that, lap 26 when Chris Buescher spun, had plenty of time to come back. It was a 260 lap race. Solid day for him. And Ty Gibbs, once again, I talked about him not having a sophomore slump. He's one I don't think will have one. When he finished in the top 10, we'll see what he does moving into Las Vegas next week. So certainly an interesting race. A lot of storylines were unfolding in this race, but the finish was not the only highlight in this race. This race was crazy from the green flag all the way to the wild 3-wide checkered flag finish. And we can start out with lap 2, a huge crash. I don't even know if these drivers, I think it was lap 1 for the drivers that were involved. Austin Dillon, a few other drivers involved in the back. Alex Bowman, this took your 2nd place, your runner-up in the Daytona 500 a week ago out of the race. You can take a look at it here. Just once again, we've heard this a lot the last couple of weeks. The accordion effect, where the drivers get stacked up. You cannot bump or hit anything in that tri-oval at Atlanta, especially under the heat. I think it was 90-something degree track temperature at that time. So the cars just got loose, got in a wreck, and that was unfortunate for those guys. It took a lot of drivers out. I know that hurt Tyler Reddick's day pretty bad. Christopher Bell, unfortunately, was completely out of the race after that. I want to say Bell was still riding around for majority of the day, but obviously no shot to go out there and get the win, get the victory. So that was unfortunate early ending of the day for a few heavy name drivers, especially those Toyota drivers. I'm going to start doing this weekly, I think. I did it last week. I want to do it this week. My top 3 cars or drivers of the race. So this probably won't always be the winner unless the winner is absolutely dominant. But there's a few drivers I really want to break down in this race. The first one is going to be Denny Hamlin, because Denny Hamlin was really fast all day, was able to make moves, maneuver through the field all day long, a lot of fun to watch. But unfortunately for Hamlin, he got caught up in issue after issue. Spun early in the race, kind of went down across Kyle Busch's nose there. Joey Logano wrecked in front of him one time, and Joey Logano is another one I'll talk about in a moment. Got some damage from that, Denny Hamlin did. And then finally at the end, the 14 car, Briscoe just gets sideways, goes straight down into Denny Hamlin, and that finally takes Denny Hamlin out of this race. But what a day for Denny Hamlin, coming from the back to the front. Denny Hamlin was a top storyline this weekend. He was fast as well last week in Daytona. Once again, he did win the Clash. We'll have to see what Denny Hamlin can do moving into Vegas next week. I think it's just 2 unfortunate weeks for the 11 team. They'll see if they can get back on track and get a solid run, but very fast day-to-day for Denny Hamlin. I have Joey Logano as my other driver. Once again, I talked about that. Got involved in a wreck midway through the race. Logano was showing some speed. Logano actually had to serve a pit road penalty at the beginning of this race because he had to go drive down pit road, serve a pass-through penalty due to a safety violation with gloves, a webbed glove, holding his hand up during qualifying. That's an insane story in itself, but was able to recover from that immediately because of that lap 2 wreck. That was the perfect thing that could happen for Joey Logano. That put him right back in the race. He passed the drivers in the wreck, stayed on the lead lap. He probably would have went 2 laps down if it wasn't for that. Joey Logano was up front battling for the win until unfortunately just lost the speed, just got loose and slid up the racetrack, and we saw that all day long, especially before the sun went down, when the track was hotter, when there was less rubber laid down. Not that Atlanta lays a whole lot of rubber down, but there is some, and that's what unfortunately ended up taking Joey Logano out of the race, or at least out of contention for this race win. My third driver I wanted to look at today was actually Michael McDowell, and you can actually go to the whole Front Row Motorsports team because Todd Gilliland led a lot of laps and was fast all day. I want to say, I don't know what happened to Gilliland. I have to take a look and see, but ended up finishing in the lower 20s, and maybe it was 26, 27, so not a great finish for Todd Gilliland, unfortunately, but Michael McDowell, after slamming, hitting the inside of pit road, once again, I talked about him earlier, ended up finishing in the 8th position, was fast all day long, and once again, qualified on pole for the first time. So those are my 3 drivers I wanted to talk about for this race, or my fastest 3 drivers of the race. Certainly interesting storylines there as well. But that's it. That's really, I don't think I got into all of it, but I had to squeeze it into a video. I think that's the main storylines following this race in Atlanta, an insane race in Atlanta. What a race it was from start to finish today. One of the best races I've ever seen, a classic race. I really like this racetrack, and I'm not the biggest super speedway drafting style race fan, but this was insane. But this was awesome. So we do go to Las Vegas next week. Thank goodness, because I think I need a non-pack racing race to watch. We had the duels that were crazy. Daytona 500 was crazy. We had today at Atlanta was insane. I need a regular intermediate style racetrack next week in Las Vegas, and hopefully it's a good race. I think it will be. It has been the last couple of seasons. So we'll sort of see from there where things go moving forward. Will the drivers that are fastest at these tracks be fast at the intermediate style tracks next week? I think so, and there's some correlation there because these intermediate style tracks now are very important in key moments of the schedule. So I think you're going to see this translate over into Las Vegas next week. But that's it. That's all there is to talk about following this race. Like and subscribe if you like the video. Please share the video if you have time. And then, of course, about Kyle Busch losing by 7/1000ths of a second. Let's get rowdy.